Why are you here? Why are you
There is a genocide in Gaza! This is the least I can do!
יש לי שאלה. אם היית כותבת פוסט כזה מתוך מכללה ערבית בעזה או בשכם, או כל מכללה ערבית אחרת, כמה זמן לדעתך היית נשארת בחיים?
Shame on you! Shame on you! Obeying orders like I
Yesterday when I was talking to my father about the way protests against what the massacre that Israel is committing in Gaza were prohibited in Europe, he said something about Herbert Marcuse and the rubber wall, that the way democracies deal with protest is to let them do it as long as it doesn't really matter. And it's only when we break this rubber wall, when we actually do something that's harmful, is when they, oppress us or, repress us. I don't know if it means that we're actually doing something important.
So will you continue protesting?
Of course. This is the least I can do.
Even if there are water gallons and arresting?
Yes, and if
Or tear gas?
whatever they choose to do to me will just prove that my voice is being heard. Israel will not be able to do what it's doing if it was held accountable by Europe and the United States and Great Britain. So it's actually here that our voices need to be heard.
Do you think you can change that?
I think the only thing that can change is enough people who realize that when we fight for justice, we fight for our own rights. It's not something we do for the Palestinians, we do it for ourselves. This is what solidarity means.
So your struggle isn't even for the Palestinians?
It's for humanity.
October the 19th, 2023. Zohar Chamberlain Regev. You are based in Frankfurt, and I would like to ask you to introduce yourself.
So I was born in the Galilee on a kibbutz near Nazareth in the Palestine occupied in 48. I grew up on that kibbutz. I lived in Israel until I was 34. I've always known about the injustice of the Zionist settler colonial project, but I didn't define it as that. I think at the time I knew about the Nakba, I knew about the ongoing injustice, the occupation of 67. I've been to the West Bank and also to places in the Negev that were affected by the Israeli oppression. When I moved to Spain in 2004, I didn't leave behind this concern about what's happening in Palestine. And in 2008, when Israel attacked Gaza, it became an acute situation that I felt I needed to respond to. So in 2009, on the first anniversary of that attack, I joined people from Code Pink and from a lot of other places around the world in Cairo. We were going to march in Gaza, and we were prevented from doing so by the Mubarak regime. Following this and through this, I got to know some Spanish activists who were on the Mavi Mara, on the first Freedom Flotilla, and then I was going to join the Freedom Flotilla in 2011. The boats were stopped by Greece, And then from 2012, I've been part of the Freedom Flotilla Coalition Steering Committee. I'm still involved in that. With my personal life story, I left Spain in 2018, and then I traveled a little bit, but I also spent 2 years or 2.5 years living as a volunteer in the West Bank, in Bethlehem, in the Palestine Museum of Natural History, and I got to know the Palestinians in a more personal way. Some Palestinians, of course, not all of them.
What's the name of the kibbutz you were born?
The kibbutz where I was born is called Kfar HaHoresh. Yeah, and as I said, it's near Nazareth. It's a small place.
Have you served in the Israel Defense Forces?
No, when I was 17, I was in a car accident, a bus accident, and I lost my leg, so I never had to do the army service.
You were just mentioning the ship to Gaza. Are you planning to sail again to Gaza?
Yes. So we've actually not sailed since 2018. In 2018, I sailed with the boat, with Alauda. We had 4 boats that year, and I sailed with Alauda from Norway until we were intercepted by the Israeli Navy. But then we were not able to sail again. We meant to sail in 2020. It was the 10th anniversary of the attack on the first flotilla. But COVID prevented us from doing so, and we've been planning to sail ever since, but it was not possible. This last summer, we, with a new boat that we have, we've made a tour of northern European ports, but this is only the first half of our mission, which will be to sail in 2024, next year. And we've been planning this for a long time. The Israeli government, the current Israeli government, is so extreme in its reactions that a lot of people are concerned that the reaction by the Israeli Navy will not be as it has been since 2010, but worse. So we don't know, but we still plan to do it. We cannot do it now for many reasons. This is a thing that requires a lot of planning and a lot of also, it depends on the conditions in the sea, but we still plan to sail this coming year.
How did you experience the 7th October? What did you do on October the 7th?
So I got up very early to some images of people in Gaza celebrating the fact that they have managed to break out of their concentration camp, and through fighting with the Israeli occupation forces, they took an army jeep, and then, you know, this is the image, the first image that I saw of this, and then there were amazing images and unheard of recordings from attacks on Israeli army bases, but also some civilian settlements. And I know, because I have friends from Gaza who have families there, and they've been writing to me and sending also images that were quite graphic and problematic. And these people were saying, we see this, we know where it comes from, but we are already worried about the reaction to this. So for me, to look at the attack, which I refuse to actually make the main focus of our conversation, as something taken out of context, as if the whole story started with the Hamas entering Israel, is totally a lie. And the Israeli dispossession, oppression, occupation of the Palestinian people is the background to this resistance. And the resistance is legitimate. Whether I agree with particular acts, that were or were only reported by Israeli propaganda is totally irrelevant. I think the important thing is to look at the root of this, and in order to avoid suffering to my people in Israel, my family, my friends, but also to all Palestinians who we somehow manage to not see as human beings, in order to avoid suffering for everybody, we need to look at the root cause. And the root cause is the settler colonialist project, the settler colonialist Zionist project.
Are you condemning the atrocity against civilians, the terror of Hamas against Israeli civilians?
I refuse to condemn it.
Why?
Because, as I said, it's only a reaction. And as I said, whether I agree with it morally or not is totally irrelevant. It is a reaction. And I cannot judge people who have been imprisoned for 17 years. You know, in Germany they don't like it. They are in love with their holy Holocaust. But with everything that the Nazis did in Europe, it lasted from 33 to 45. Israel has had Palestinians under terrible, terrible conditions, and it doesn't matter if it's exactly the same, for much, much longer. So the reactions, even if I don't agree with them, they come from somewhere. They shouldn't have come as a surprise to anybody. We've been, as the Freedom Flotilla Coalition, saying for at least for the time that I've been there, for at least 11 years, this is unlivable. This is an inhuman and criminal blockade. It has to stop. The consequences of not stopping it is what we see when Hamas enters Israel.
How does this October 7th terrorist attack of Hamas against Israeli citizens and soldiers affecting Germany and the policy of Germany, the civil discourse in Germany?
From what I understand, and my German is not good enough, but I do hear enough of official declarations by politicians here, Mike Joseph in Frankfurt, but also the Chancellor, and how they give total support to the war crimes that Israel commits. I think this is so hypocritical, because I believe that the lessons Germany should have learned from what happened here in the 1930s and 40s is that this should never happen anywhere by anybody. And when Germany refuses to see that systematic disregard for human rights and international law by Israel is the cause of all this, and when Germany doesn't hold Israel accountable for its war crimes and crimes against humanity, it betrays the memory of the Holocaust survivors and victims.
Zohar, yesterday, Wednesday evening, I saw you again after a long time. Last time we met was 2015 on Giuliano 2, when we were sailing to Gaza. And yesterday I saw you at a band manifestation. Why did you protest? How did you experience your arrest by Frankfurt police?
Okay, so going back again to Saturday, October 7th, as soon as we heard, we thought it was time to protest, but it was very spontaneous. So we just went with a flag, and as long as we were 2 people, nobody did anything. But as soon as there were 4 people protesting, the police dispersed them. They did not want to do a spontaneous registration, but it was stopped. Then we registered a demonstration for last Wednesday, and that was banned. And we gathered in the place, and we tried walking in the streets in like pairs or alone. And then the police started saying, you're not allowed to walk with a Palestinian flag. And I showed them the law that says I'm allowed to carry any flag anywhere, and they said no, it's a forbidden demonstration and any material for the demonstration is also forbidden. So this was the first time the police warned me, and I experienced this as a silencing. And then on Saturday we demonstrated and the police again stopped us. There was some legal battle about the legality of the demonstration, and again we demonstrated, and there they actually carried me away and asked for my ID and confiscated some stuff that I had in my bag. But yesterday we were just going to sit with candles in the Hauptwache in mourning of the thousands of people, among them more than 1,000 children who are murdered in Gaza. And again, the police comes and says we are not allowed to do so. So I sat in front of this water cannon and would not move, even though I got soaked wet. And then they carried me away, and I told those policemen who were carrying me that they should be ashamed of themselves, because what they're doing, obeying these immoral orders to just stop people from expressing grief over crimes against humanity, is not to human moral standards. They should know that they should not be obeying these orders.
And what do you say about banning manifestations?
I think what we are seeing now, and it's not just Germany, a demonstration in France that I was going to go to this weekend has also been banned by the French government, and there's been it's an ongoing process, also with the call for boycott, divestment and sanctions, that it is not allowed to do because it's anti-Semitic, which is a complete false accusation. And this whole thing just shows us that the democracy in Europe is a farce. We are only allowed to protest or to go out on the street when it doesn't actually affect anything, when we are not threatening the system. But my real concern is about all these leftist groups in Frankfurt, and in the year that I've lived here I got to know a lot of them, and most of them are protesting against police brutality, against repression, but they will not stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people when they are not allowed to march. They don't have to even agree with what we're saying, but they should be standing with us, because the fact that we are stopped from protesting will affect them eventually. And we know this about, when they came for the communists. This is not something new in German history.
Zohar, what do you think about the left in Germany? What's the reaction of the left towards the October 7th terror against Israel? How do you think about the left in Germany?
I think there is a pathology here, and the pathology affects the perpetrators and the victims of the Third Reich, not the same way, but the German guilt complex is completely misguided when it thinks that what it needs to do is to support Israel whatever it does, and to see again that the reporting of the Hamas attack is shameful because it was completely devoid of context. There was no talk about what came previously, about more young people and children killed by Israel in this since the year began than many years before, and the constant aggression against holy Muslim sites in Jerusalem, against Christians in Jerusalem. When you ignore all this and you just say, oh, what Hamas does is terrible, then you're lying. You're lying to yourself, and you're lying even to those Israelis affected by this, Israelis who survived this attack and are saying, we understand that the way to stop this is not by bombing Gaza into bits. And when you don't listen to those Israelis, you instead listen to the fascists in the government, then you're following the footsteps of the Nazis here.
Do you understand that this is sounds very hard or harsh as a German, like a bourgeois German, to hear these words?
It is very hard, and I've had so many encounters with, again, those people who are together with me in other struggles here in the German left, and when this comes up, they all of a sudden become so sensitive. And to tell you the truth, it makes my blood boil, because you are sensitive about something that, whatever terrible occurrence in human history it's over. And the human tragedy happening right now is stoppable. If you only stand up to human rights and international law. We're not asking you to condone terrorism, but what you're actually doing is condoning the state terrorism of Israel. And this is not an easy matter.
According to Israeli authorities, Hamas has 199 hostages kidnapped in Israel on October 7th. When you are sailing to Gaza, as you are planning to do so in 2024, aren't you afraid of being kidnapped by Hamas when you are arriving?
Personally, I'm not afraid. I think Hamas was very clear about the reason why it took hostages. It's actually the Israeli doctrine to not let Hamas take hostages, even at the cost of the lives of not only the people being kidnapped, but also other soldiers who need to avoid them being kidnapped. This is called the Hannibal doctrine, and this shows the disrespect of the Israeli military machine to human life in general, including Israeli lives. Israelis could exchange. They have thousands of Palestinians in their prison system, some of them under administrative detention, which means they are not even formally accused of anything. These people are political prisoners. They should have been released anyway. But what Hamas is trying to do is force Israel to exchange those political prisoners for those. And what do they base it on? They base it on this one Gilad Shalit who was exchanged for 1,000 other human beings. The lack of value for Palestinian lives is so apparent here. What Israel shows now, its true color, is that it doesn't even care about the lives of its own citizens. It's not the innocent lives that matter here. What matters is to perpetuate this genocide on Gaza. Look for any excuse to just kill and destroy all possibility for living together in Western Asia. Because the way I experience Palestinians, and I cannot speak for all of them, of course there are people who are so scarred by their suffering that it will be very, very hard for them to live together. But the Palestinians I know and care for are willing, if only let, to live side by side in a free Palestine with any other human being, including Israeli Jews.
What's the solution, Zohar?
Like any settler colonialist struggle against settler colonialism, the solution should be that the descendants of the settlers and the descendants of the original inhabitants of the land should live together, guided by the principles of human rights and international law. This will guarantee the safety of Jews in Israel much better than this Zionist project that advocates for Jewish supremacy and for endless war.
Neukölln, a neighborhood of Berlin where Palestinians live, among other inhabitants coming from Syria, Lebanon, Turkey, many countries in the Middle East. Yeah, it's burning. They burn cars, a playing ground for children, some garbages, and also there was Molotov cocktail attack against a synagogue in Berlin. How do we fight anti-Semitism in Germany?
Again, to me, the answer is very simple. Anti-Semitism is a form of racism. If we unite against racism, we can tackle the real anti-Semitism that of course still exists. But if we mix anti-Semitism with legitimate criticism of the policies of all Israeli governments and the ideology of Zionism that tries to say that the only safe way for Jews to exist is by displacing other people from their land, then we are giving free rein to this anti-Semitism. We're actually helping this. And you can see this in the United States, where some young Jews are waking up to this reality and are saying there is real right-wing anti-Semitism in the United States, but the only thing that is being persecuted is criticism of Israel. And what I've heard from Berlin is that there were incidences of racial profiling of people, not letting them even walk in their own neighborhood because of, fear of support for terrorism. And to me, this is reminiscent of what Israel has done in Hebron after the massacre committed by an Israeli settler, that the result of which was to close down the Shuhada Street and not let Palestinians walk out of their own houses. And of course, this brings up, if you don't give legitimacy to protest in a democratic framework, you open the door to all sorts of outbursts that are much more violent. But again, I put the blame on the German government and the German police. The German government because of its policy of supporting Israel at all costs, and the German police for obeying these crazy orders. And now they are facing something that is out of control.
Zohar, the opinions that you are expressing does not represent the majority of Israeli citizens in the state of Israel. Is it true what I'm saying?
Of course it's true. My place is not in Israel. Again, Germany has given me, as a granddaughter of German citizens forced to leave Germany in the 1930s, because they recognize the right of refugees to return. Israel does not allow the same for Palestinians. So my place is to come to Germany and tell Germans stuff they don't want to listen, but definitely I don't feel at home in occupied Palestine. Because of my opinions, because of who I am, and because of what my people are doing. It's not safe for me there.
So not planning to return to your kibbutz where you were born?
I tell my Palestinian friends who tell me, when are you coming back? I tell them I come back when Palestine is free.
And what's the reactions of the majority? What do Israeli citizens tell you when they hear your opinions?
When we met just now, I told you I needed to finish writing an angry message, and this was a reaction to a kibbutz member from the kibbutz where I grew up, so somebody who knows me since the day I was born, a good friend of my mother, and he says you should be ashamed of yourself if you would be voicing these opinions from the Palestinian side. They would surely kill you for this. Those people don't understand at all where I'm coming from. I commented on a post by a Palestinian woman who's a peace activist for many years and is working in an Israeli college, and she was fired for something that she posted or for voicing her opinion. So what the person tells me is, יש לי שאלה, אם היית כותבת פוסט כזה מתוך מכללה ערבית בעזה או בשכם, או כל מכללה ערבית אחרת, כמה זמן לדעתך היית נשארת בחיים? למה כל הפוסטים והמאמרים של לוחמות ולוחמי החופש וזכויות האזרח כמוך מופנים תמיד אל הצד הישראלי או היהודי? לא ראיתי תגובות שלכם מיד אחרי הזוועה של שבת שעברה. ישראל נלחמת נגד החמאס עכשיו, ארגון שאינו מייצג את העם הפלסטיני, אלא רק את האסלאם הרדיקלי שנובע בשפע מהמעיין האיראני, אולם הוא נבחר בבחירות דמוקרטיות על ידי העם בעזה, מתוך אמונה ביכולתו לדאוג ולטפל בעזתים. ואולם, ארגון הרוצחים הזה הפך את עזה לבסיס אימונים ופיתוח לקיום המטרה האיראנית, קרי השמדת מדינת ישראל וסיפוחה לחליפות אסלאמית כלשהי, תוך רמיסת כל שמץ של זכויות לתושבים, כולל שימוש בהם כשכפ"ץ מגן. אין צבא כמו צה"ל שמסתדל לא לפגוע ועושה כל מאמץ אפשרי להימנע מפגיעה בתושבים חפים מפשע, כמו גם לתמוך ולסייע במידת האפשר בהספקת צרכים הומניים. ואולם, במלחמה יש נפגעים, ולפעמים גם חפים מפשע, עם כל הצער, וצה"ל מנסה למנוע זאת. ובאשר לך, מאחר שכנראה אינך בדיוק אובייקטיבית, מוטב היה לך להימנע בעת הזאת מהבעת דעות שנתפסות ממילא כנוגדות את המלחמה הצודקת הזאת, ויש בהם פוטנציאל להצתת אש מיותרת, כמו גם התחביב להניף דגלי פלסטין בקמפוסים כל פעם שישנה פעילות צבאית בעזה או בגדה. מוטב לך שתתעסקי בהרגעת הרוחות ולא הצתתן. What this person is saying is that if I would voice the opposite opinions from the Palestinian side, criticizing the Palestinian side, I would not survive, I would be killed. And then he goes on to say that the Hamas was elected in Gaza, even though it doesn't represent the Palestinians, because it represents Iranian forces, and it goes on to say that the Israeli army is the most moral army in the world, and the advice to me at the end is not to voice these opinions because they just make unnecessary escalation to the situation. And now I read my reply in Hebrew. אתה בטח לא תסלח לי, אז אין טעם שאתנצל. אבל אם כבר דנים אבל אני כבר שנים רבות זועקת מכל במה שניתנת לי שהציונות כאידיאולוגיה של עליונות יהודית והמדיניות המיליטנטית של כל ממשלות ישראל מסכנת כל אפשרות לחיות במרחב אסיה המערבית. אני עושה זאת מתוך אהבה ולא מתוך שנאה. אני לא מגנה את ההתנגדות הפלסטינית, בין אם אני מוצאת שהיא עולמת את ערכי המוסר שלי, שדרך אגב תואמים את מה שמורות כל הדתות המונותאיסטיות, כולל האסלאם וגם דרכים רוחניות אחרות, מכיוון שמה שהם עושים הוא תגובה לעשרות שנים של התעללות, ואם לא נטפל בשורש הבעיה, היא רק תחריף. So basically what I'm saying is I will not apologize. I have been shouting or lifting my voice for years to say that Zionism is a Jewish supremacist ideology, and the militant policies of all Israeli governments are putting in danger every possibility to live in Western Asia. And I do this out of love and not out of hate. I say that I do not condemn the Palestinian resistance, whether I find that it follows my moral values that are actually the same values shared by all monotheistic religions, including Islam and other spiritual practices, because what they do is a reaction to dozens of years of torture. And if we don't deal with the root of the problem, it will only get worse.
So how do you think you can live together with the person who wrote this message to you in future?
I can live together with any person, and we can argue and we can have disagreements. This is all about sharing opinions. What I cannot live with is systematic violation of human rights and international law.
Can you live together with a Hamas terrorist?
I can live together with people who fight for their freedoms, yes.